Okay, hi. I'm going to start off by saying that I thought that I knew. It's not that I thought that I knew, actually. It's that I knew about the creation that I live in because NASA had told me, and I had watched a bunch of NASA documentaries. And I was really enthusiastic about it, and I believed it all. I had learned it all in science, right, when we're kids. And then when we become adults, we become enthusiastic about the cosmos again. And we look into all the NASA stuff, and they spoon feed us all of this information. But eventually I started to get really annoyed because all I was watching was cartoons with these NASA documentaries. It was like constant computer generated images, and I just couldn't understand that. So my knowing started to crumble, and I had to re-examine what I had been told. I had also come in contact with someone who educated me on conspiracy theories and, for instance, the moon landing, the faked moon landing, and also just like the Illuminati and Freemasons and like satanic symbolism in the music industry and Hollywood and all of this. So I ended up, having a complete and total paradigm shift, as many of us have. So I'm going to talk to you today about yoga and the level earth. The Yoga Sutras don't say anything about the earth being level. You would have to go to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I think it's chapter 5 in the Bhagavatam, where the earth is described, and it's described as like a flat disc mandala, bhumandala. And the rest of the layout of the cosmos, not just this dimension, but multiple dimensions, are described in detail. It makes the Bible look elementary in its description of the creation. The sutras don't say anything about it, but the sutras do. Interestingly, Patanjali brings up the pole star, and he also brings up the planets in association with Samadhi. And so that's what we're going to talk about today a lot, is Samadhi, and how this 8th and final stage of yoga called Samadhi, and I'm going to break down the definition of that word, what it means. How Samadhi can lead us to higher knowledge, to transcendental knowledge. And Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras himself, tells us that with this Samadhi, that we are to apply it, this insight, to the cosmos. He specifically refers to the pole star, and so we'll get to that. So let me begin. This started off as a written lecture. So through my application of natural study, what I call natural study, this is non-corporate study of things. Through my natural study, meaning through the use of my own senses and my own intelligence, I have been looking at our environment in a very different way. I'm using my own developed method of research, contemplation. So I do the research, then I contemplate the research. I really need to think about the research, who it's coming from, where it's coming from. Then meditation, taking that knowledge into meditation and letting it sort of integrate into the psyche on a deeper level. Then application, and deduction. This is experimenting, and this is conclusion, or at least making a deduction. Each step of the process from research to deduction takes time and is given whatever time and attention is needed to make a sound conclusion. With each observation and each experiment I conduct, I give myself permission to leave behind the programming downloaded into each of us during our years subjected to the worldwide Rothschild education system, reinforced by a world full of indoctrinated adults who were once children taught the same things. I let go of what I think I know about the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the realm at large for the sake of possibly seeing something for myself. To be my own scientist, to be my own cosmologist, to be my own earthologist. Why take the word of competitive scientists and government cosmologists who I don't even know when I myself am a scientist? One really only needs a keen intelligence, a scientific method, and the bravery to do science. How does yoga make one a supreme scientist? As a person who has applied the yoga process to the best of my ability thus far, in my current life and my most recent last known life, I've come to discover yoga is an integral part of supernatural investigation. The goal of yoga is its 8th stage called Samadhi in Sanskrit. Samadhi translated is this. Sam, it means complete. D means insight. So the word means complete insight. Complete insight is a big, huge deal to Patanjali, author of the Yoga Sutras, which standardized the 8-stage process that we know of as yoga. Complete insight means that you can look at something with clarity and purified intelligence. It means you can examine things from a highly unbiased, unconditioned point of view. The phenomenon of unblemished, fully intelligent viewing is one level or aspect of the complete insight that comes as the goal of yoga. Samadhi is perfected, lengthened, and with serious practice made as the standard condition within the psyche of that yogin. Patanjali tells us that once we achieve a complete insight or samadhi, we need to use it to examine things we once didn't understand. He specifically suggests in chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras to apply the complete insight to some particular things. Okay, and I'm going to tell you what these things are because it's absolutely fascinating. So, Patanjali tells us to apply this amazing insight, this samadhi, to knowledge of the past and future. This is chapter 3, verse 16, and I'm going to keep going verse after verse. He tells us to apply this insight to knowledge of language and all creatures, knowledge of previous lives, knowledge of the contents of the mental and emotional energy in the mind of others, power of invisibility, power of imperceptibility, knowledge of entry into the hereafter, the power of friendliness, the strength of an elephant, knowledge of what is subtle, concealed, and what is remote from him. Okay, so I just read you verses 16 through 26 in chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras. Now, this should be 26. Now we're going to pay special attention to these next ones, 27 through 29. Patanjali tells us, with this complete insight, that we have knowledge of the earth in relation to the sun god or sun planet. To apply the insight to knowledge about the system of the stars in reference to the moon or moon god. And to apply our insight to knowledge of the course of the planets in relation to the pole star. So those are the 3 verses. It goes on, and I actually continue on till, actually, I was right, I do continue on till 36 in my lecture. But I'll stop there because that's the main point of what I'm talking about, is that Patanjali specifically tells us to take this completed insight after all of this work doing the yoga, the yamas, the niyamas, the asana, the pranayama, the pratyahara, the dharana, the dhyana, and finally we get to this completed insight, this purified intelligence. And he specifically tells us that we should look at the movement of the planets in relation to the pole star, that we should apply this intelligence to knowledge of the earth in relation to the sun god or sun planet. I think that that's fascinating, and I think it's a part of yoga that often gets overlooked because people don't really bother to read the Yoga Sutras or study them. But how fascinating are they? So this samadhi, this purified intelligence, can help us to understand where we are and to deprogram us from all of the lies that we were told, all the made-up stories that we were told. I've been up in a plane many times. I've not seen a bit of curvature. Nobody has. I've also been to the beach and looked at the horizon many times and seen boats go over the horizon and then gotten out my binoculars and there they are again. And people that will try to argue about that will, on one hand, say that you can watch a boat disappear over the horizon as if the earth is that small, and then on the other hand say that your passenger plane didn't go up high enough for you to see the curvature, as if the earth is that big that at 50,000 feet you wouldn't be able to see a little bit of, you'd see a lot of curvature. If the thing is a ball, it doesn't matter how high up you go or how low you go, the horizon has to drop on a sphere. It doesn't take Einstein to figure that out. So in the first stages of complete insight, the supernatural experiences can be quick and fluttering. So when you're approaching this purified intelligence, it might just happen for a moment. Samadhi doesn't just last forever, especially in the beginning stages of samadhi. The supernatural experiences and intelligences can be quick and fleeting, but clear in the truth of what you observed and the knowledge you gained from it. But it doesn't happen just because you will it to. I'm not talking about new agey feels. I'm talking about yogically induced supernatural insight. Supernatural perceptions come after much alone time and oxygen infusion through the entirety of the psychological house or subtle body. And the components within it, like the intelligence component within it, that you use to view things and to analyze them. Carbon dioxide in the system has to be greatly reduced because it clouds perception. Oxygen has to be greatly increased because it cleans our perception equipment. With continued discipline, those perception tools may convert to higher modes. Let me say that again. With continued discipline and purification practices, those perception tools in your own head may convert to higher modes of usage for supernatural experiences. We are not just one-dimensional beings. Although because of fluoride and soda and our diets and GMOs and non-organic foods and all of this stuff and chemtrails and stuff, we seem to be one-dimensional beings, but we are multi-dimensional beings. And our intelligence equipment that's inside of the head, the tools and equipment that you use to think and analyze things, they have the potential to shift into a higher mode. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna refers to reality-piercing insight. Yogic insight pierces reality. He stresses to the emotionally incapacitated warrior, Arjuna, that in order to fulfill his destiny, to fulfill his own destiny, he would have to execute his duty, using reality-penetrating insight. He would have to see the battle before him that he was so freaked out by through yogic eyes. eyes which pierce through the unknown to see the supernatural truth of any matter. And remember in the Gita, that's when Krishna showed Arjuna the universal form. What is Krishna's reality-piercing insight? In my opinion, Krishna's reality-piercing insight is the same as Patanjali's complete insight, or Samadhi. And how does one determine if one has experienced even a single moment of complete, unobstructed, uninfluenced, unconditioned insight? Because the yoga requires you to keep track of these things. The process is very personal and very observable to the practitioner. Yoga requires the practitioner accountability for retaining progresses made. You gotta write stuff down. You gotta record stuff. This is what the sages did and the yogis did, the merciful ones. They wrote down what they found, like Patanjali. That's the only reason we have Patanjali's business today. It's between yourself, your meditation, your contemplation, your application of insight, and your relationship with the powers that be. All these things should be examined and kept sorted. This level of practice is difficult to get to because it requires a lot of meditation and alone time. And the world culture is very active and very socialistic, so true yoga practice is really scarce because it's not a social thing. So, I'm studying the movement of the sun, its path, and the way it distributes its light. I've meditated on it and drawn conclusions that do not match up with what we were taught. I'm studying the movement of the moon, its path, and the way it distributes light. I've meditated on it, and my experiences and conclusions differ with those of what we were taught. I'm studying the movement of the stars at night, and as I've watched them and meditated on them, my conclusions have been different than those we were taught. And again, I've physically flown in an airplane high up in the sky multiple times, each time searching for the curve of the earth, but my conclusions do not coincide with what we are told. The horizon keeps meeting me at eye level. There is something above us that really matters in terms of our level of local insight and the application of the complete and clear insight onto matters that face us right here, right now. I won't tell anyone what to believe for themselves, but during my observations and meditations, it was made clear in my consciousness something I had suspected, but had not fully integrated. That is that the sun really is like a deity, not in a symbolic way, but literally, not in some superficial, gaseous, yellow dwarf kind of way, but as a divine entity, an everlasting maintainer of life on this plane. Among the many things it does, the sun tells us what time of day it is. The moon is also like a deity, a supernatural being producing its own noticeably cool light, displayed in sections ranging from full light to medium light to no light. The moon follows a set path and is responsible for many functions in the system. Among many things, the moon tells us what day it is. The night sky displays fixed luminaries following the exact same course each and every season for all of recorded time. Nevertheless, we are indoctrinated to believe that the Earth and solar system careen at high speed through an endless space vacuum filled with exploding gases called nebula or stars. But what I have found through my observations, though, is that with cultivated insight, these points of light are experienced as coherent celestial entities. Poets, philosophers, and prophetic stargazers have written and immortalized the night sky as the handiwork of the gods, a supernatural environment of heavenly worlds. Among many things, the stars tell us what month it is. The earth, too, is a deity. It appears a celestial plane of unknown expanse and shape. In accordance with the sun, moon, and stars, it lives, breathes, and nourishes purposefully its inhabitants, its offspring. The sun, moon, stars, and earth are not the result of a cosmic accident, but rather purposeful parts of a functioning dimension, with earth as the central platform of this particular realm. There are many higher realms. There are many higher realms than this. There are lower realms too. The earth is not moving, though, as we've been told it is, at least not by my physical, mental, and cosmic calculations. It vibrates. It is magnetic. It is alive and is the face of this portion of the cosmic clock, functioning in the perfect divine timing it displays to us and did to all of our ancestors. Looking up in this new way has invoked a sense of cosmic grounding, a sensation in my psyche which has stabilized my internal energies and alerted me to the importance of offering proper knowledge filled with respect for the celestial stability and immobility of earth. Patanjali mentioned this stability of the psyche. Because of my investigations, I have a new relationship with earth. As Erinn Earth, I couldn't be more pleased with this. I am a lover of knowledge, and it is my pursuit. Even if the new knowledge causes me to have to change or modify or evolve my worldview, I'll do it again and again, up-leveling my consciousness. Thanks to moments of clear insight, I have some new understandings of the realm we live in, which is held together by celestial forces mostly unimaginable to the average human mind, especially at this juncture in human history. We seem especially distracted away from really looking at the sky. The sky is often our first encounter, though, with something unmistakably divine. It may be big or it may be little. Everything is relative to the experiencer. And to close, I would just like to encourage you, as often as possible, to look at the sky, especially the night sky, and understand that none of those constellations have ever changed. That's very important to acknowledge and to understand, because no matter how many trillions of miles they try to claim that we are away from these shining lights in the sky, we couldn't ever be so far away that they would never change. So we have to appreciate what they are. And even in the Bible, the Christian Bible, I love how it says in there that God named every single one of them, that every single one of those stars has a name. It's someone. It's not just something that we're seeing from trillions of miles away. It's right there. And they're there for a reason. And part of that reason is to up-level us as beings so that we look up and we understand that what we're seeking in terms of transcendence and liberation is upward. We have to go upward in our bodies, in our chakra system, in our meditations, and even further up beyond ourselves toward those divine lights. They're not there by accident.